she said. Check the maid's room. She's the only one who would steal it. But the real thief was sleeping under her own roof. Turns out she didn't know anything at all. The golden hour bathed the Vance estate in a warm, deceptive glow. Inside, the air was filled with the click of heels on marble, the rustle of silk, and the muted hum of anticipation. Eleanor Vance stood before a full-length mirror in her walk-in closet, adjusting the neckline of her designer gown. Every detail of her look had been meticulously curated for the annual gala, a night where reputations were polished like silver. Her gaze drifted to the velvet box on her vanity. The necklace, a delicate cascade of vintage diamonds inherited from her grandmother. It wasn't just jewelry. It was legacy. She opened the box. It was empty. Her breath caught. Her fingers rifled through drawers, jewelry stands, even under cushions. Nothing. The necklace was gone. Arthur, she called, her voice shrill. Her husband appeared moments later, straightening his cufflinks. It's not here, she said, eyes wide. My necklace, it's gone. Arthur blinked slowly. Are you sure? Maybe you misplaced it. I don't misplace heirlooms, she snapped. It was right here this morning. Eleanor stormed out, calling for Sophia. The 16-year-old appeared at the top of the staircase, dressed in a simple black dress, eyes already weary. Sophia, did you see my necklace? No, she replied softly, then paused. Did you ask Beatrice? That one name seemed to vacuum the air from the room. Beatrice had been with them for nearly a decade. Discreet, dependable, never intrusive, but she had been the only one in the house that afternoon while Eleanor was at the salon. Eleanor's eyes narrowed. She turned toward the staff wing. She found Beatrice folding linens in the laundry room, her dark hands gentle and practiced. The scent of lavender drifted from the sheets. Beatrice, Eleanor began, her voice icy. My necklace is missing. Beatrice looked up startled. I haven't seen it, ma'am. I only cleaned the closet. I didn't open anything. Eleanor folded her arms. You expect me to believe that? You were the only one here. I would never take from you. Beatrice's voice quivered, but her eyes met Eleanor steadily. You know me. I thought I did, Eleanor replied. The silence that followed was louder than any scream. Then Eleanor spoke again, this time final. I want you to leave now, and don't expect a paycheck. Beatrice's hands trembled as she placed the linens down. Her face, lined with quiet strength, held no anger, only a deep, ancient sadness. I've worked in this house for years, ma'am. Watched your child grow. I have nothing in my pockets but the truth. But Eleanor had already turned away. Beatrice walked out the back door, her shoulders straight, her eyes shimmering with unspilled tears. The late afternoon sun cast a long shadow behind her as the door clicked shut. That night, the house felt unusually quiet. Sophia sat curled on the sofa, her eyes fixed on the flickering TV, but watching nothing at all. When Eleanor passed her, she noticed something odd. Sophia's hands were clenched, her jaw tight. You okay, sweetheart? Eleanor asked. Sophia nodded, but her eyes never left the floor. Outside, the moon rose silently over a house that had lost more than just a necklace. The days following Beatrice's departure settled over the Vance house like a gray fog, dense, cold, and unspoken. Eleanor paced through her home as if haunted by its silence. Every room she passed, immaculate and sterile, felt emptier than before, without Beatrice's quiet humming in the laundry room, the scent of cinnamon drifting from the kitchen, or the gentle clatter of dishes in the sink. The estate seemed to echo only Eleanor's own restlessness. In the sunroom, she sipped from a porcelain teacup as a group of her friends gathered, draped in cashmere and pearls, murmuring over biscotti and scandal. She didn't even look me in the eye, Eleanor insisted, voice sharp with conviction. You know, when someone knows they're guilty, they can't look at you. One of the women nodded absently. That's true sometimes. Or maybe she was just... Another friend offered, stirring her tea slowly. Shocked. I mean, it's a serious accusation. Eleanor's expression hardened. She was the only one there. Who else could it be? The room fell silent for a beat too long. The clink of a teaspoon seemed suddenly loud. The women shifted in their seats, supportive, yes, but cautious, as if unsure whether they were hearing fact or denial. Meanwhile, Arthur had grown more distant. At the dinner table, he barely glanced up from his phone. Conference calls bled into late-night emails. When Eleanor brought up the necklace again, he offered only a distracted grunt. "Arthur, do you even care that it's missing?" she snapped one evening. He finally looked at her, eyes dull. "It's a necklace, Eleanor. You have others. Let it go." Eleanor recoiled, stunned. Let it go. It wasn't just the necklace. It was about trust, about knowing who belonged in her home. But Arthur's gaze had already dropped back to his screen. Sophia, too, was drifting away. She spent most of her time in her room, headphones on, sketchpad in hand. Eleanor rarely got more than a fine or whatever in response to anything she said. The distance between them stretched wider with every passing day. One afternoon, as Eleanor was tidying Sophia's room, a task Beatrice used to handle, she found something that made her pause. It was a sketch, unfinished but clearly deliberate. Eleanor lifted the sheet of paper from the desk and stared. The drawing showed Beatrice standing tall, eyes shining with tears. There was strength in the way she was drawn. Sleeves rolled, hands dusted with flour as if caught in the middle of baking, yet noble, almost heroic. A soft radiance surrounded her face. Eleanor blinked. The detail was undeniable. She glanced around, then slowly tucked the sketch back beneath the pile. "Misplaced sympathy," she muttered aloud. "That's all it is. Teenagers and their dramatics." But something in her chest tightened. Later that night, as she lay in bed, her mind refused to rest. She remembered the way Beatrice used to read to Sophia, sitting cross-legged on the rug with a stack of fairy tales. The way Sophia's laughter used to ring through the kitchen while they baked cookies, hands covered in batter. How Beatrice had once calmed Sophia's sobs in the middle of the night when a thunderstorm rattled the windows, and Eleanor hadn't heard a thing. Those memories came uninvited, vivid and intrusive, and beneath them, a flicker of unease began to take root. But Eleanor pressed it down, refusing to let guilt find a foothold. The next morning, she walked past Sophia's room without knocking, not noticing the way her daughter quickly turned a page in her journal, not seeing the words scribbled there. "I miss her. I know the truth and I don't know how to carry it." Outside, the wind rustled through the trees, whispering through the empty space Beatrice had left behind. The sun hung low behind a veil of clouds as Eleanor descended the back stairs into the laundry room, Beatrice's old domain. The polished floors of the rest of the house gave way to the muted hum of this tucked-away corner, filled with the scent of linen and lavender, though neither had been used since Beatrice was forced to leave. Eleanor paused in the doorway, her fingers grazing the switch plate. Something had driven her here, curiosity perhaps. But deeper than that was a strange pressure behind her ribs. Guilt, unspoken but insistent. She spotted the box right away. Nestled in the corner behind the ironing board, a cardboard crate with duct-taped edges and Beatrice's name scrawled in marker on the side. B. Hawkins Private. Eleanor pulled it out and set it on the folding table, brushing off a thin film of dust. The tape peeled back with a soft crack, and she hesitated before opening the lid, as if unsealing more than cardboard. Inside, there was no jewelry, no misplaced silverware, no hint of theft. Instead, she found something else entirely. The first item was a birthday card, childish handwriting scrolled across the front in bright blue crayon. Inside, Sophia had written, "Thank you for being my safe place when I feel invisible. You're my real comfort. Love, Sophia." Eleanor's throat tightened. She ran her fingers over the crayon letters, now slightly faded, and imagined Sophia, maybe 7 or 8, tucking it into Beatrice's hands. Beneath the card was a photo, glossy and slightly bent. Sophia again, younger, with wild curls and a toothy grin, wrapped tightly around Beatrice's waist. Beatrice was mid-laugh, her arms gently holding Sophia as if nothing in the world mattered but that moment. Eleanor sat down slowly, her knees weakening. These weren't keepsakes of a thief. They were moments of a bond she had never truly seen. At the bottom of the box lay a worn, leather-bound notebook. Eleanor hesitated, then opened it. The handwriting was precise, slanted. Beatrice's. She had another nightmare last night. Woke up calling for her mom, but it was me she clung to. Eleanor doesn't know she's slipping through her fingers. Sometimes I want to say something, but I'm afraid. Afraid of losing what little ground I have. But someone has to protect her. Eleanor blinked against the burning behind her eyes. The entries continued. Small moments, gentle observations, fragments of concern layered over years. And then she saw the phrase repeated twice, underlined once in red ink. The truth is buried closer than she knows. Eleanor's chest constricted. She closed the notebook with shaking hands. All this time she'd buried her discomfort beneath pride, brushed off the sketch Sophia drew, pushed aside the memories of late-night laughter in the kitchen. Her suspicions had been loud, but the truth had been quiet, tucked into corners, waiting to be seen. She reached for her phone and dialed Beatrice's number. It rang once, twice, straight to voicemail. Eleanor left a message anyway. Beatrice, it's Eleanor. I found your box. I'm sorry. I don't know what I was thinking. Please, if you're willing, call me back. There's more I need to say. She hung up and stared at the wall for a long time. That night, the house was unnervingly quiet. Arthur was out again, working late. Eleanor sat at the kitchen table, the journal beside her, the picture tucked under her palm. Then a soft sound broke the silence. Sniffling, a muffled sob. She rose, followed the noise, and found Sophia sitting on the hallway floor just outside her bedroom. Her knees were tucked to her chest, her face buried in them. Her shoulders trembled. Sophia, Eleanor whispered. Sophia looked up, her cheeks streaked with tears. Her lips quivered before she spoke. I didn't think it would get this far, she whispered. Eleanor knelt beside her, heart hammering. What do you mean? I just wanted you to listen. To see her. She didn't do it, Mom. I knew she didn't. But you wouldn't even. Her voice cracked. And now she's gone. Eleanor pulled her daughter into her arms without a word. For the first time in weeks, Sophia didn't pull away. The morning sun spilled softly through the wide kitchen windows, illuminating the polished marble counters that once gleamed with pride, but now felt cold, sterile, and distant. Eleanor sat across from Sophia at the long dining table, the untouched teacups between them steaming quietly. The silence stretched until it nearly buckled under the weight of what had yet to be said. Eleanor leaned in, her voice steady but low. Sophia, I need to know the truth. All of it. No more secrets. Sophia, her face pale and drawn from a sleepless night, looked down at her hands. Her fingers twisted around the edges of her sweatshirt sleeves, tugging them tighter as if trying to disappear into the fabric. I didn't mean for it to happen like this, she murmured. Eleanor waited, saying nothing, just listening. For once, really listening. Sophia's eyes filled with tears as she whispered, I saw him. Eleanor blinked. Saw who? Dad, Sophia said, barely audible. I saw him take the necklace. The words hung in the air like shattered crystal. Eleanor's breath caught. What? It was the afternoon you two fought, Sophia said, voice trembling. You were yelling upstairs. I stayed in my room, but the door was cracked. He came down after slamming the bedroom door. He looked angry but also scared. I watched from the hallway. He went straight to your jewelry box, pulled out the necklace, and put it in his briefcase. Eleanor's chest tightened, the ground beneath her suddenly unsteady. Why didn't you tell me? She asked, though she already feared the answer. Sophia wiped at her face. I tried. I was going to. But when you accused Beatrice, and the way you looked at her, I didn't know how to speak up without making things worse. I thought maybe he'd just return it, that he'd feel guilty. Eleanor's hands gripped the edge of the table. Did he say anything to you? Sophia hesitated. He told me not to get involved, that it was grown-up stuff that you'd thank him later. He said I didn't understand how close things were to falling apart. A wave of nausea rose in Eleanor's throat. Everything started falling into place. the puzzle pieces that never quite fit now snapping together in cruel clarity. Arthur's late-night phone calls, the quick glances at their dwindling bank statements, his sudden increase in business trips, the way he dismissed her worries with a laugh and a kiss on the forehead. She thought he was protecting her from stress. He was protecting himself from discovery. Eleanor stood slowly, moving toward the window above the sink. Outside, the hedges were neatly trimmed, the lawn a sea of green perfection, an illusion like her marriage. She had spent so many years perfecting the image. The successful lawyer husband, the picture-perfect home, the well-behaved daughter, and the help that knew their place. It had all been crafted so meticulously, and yet beneath the polish was rot, and the cost of that illusion had been a woman's dignity. Beatrice. Eleanor closed her eyes, guilt flooding in waves. She had accused an innocent woman, fired her without hesitation, without a single ounce of benefit of the doubt. The realization hit harder than any betrayal Arthur could have committed. Eleanor had chosen prejudice over trust, image over truth. When she turned back to Sophia, her voice was softer. "Thank you for telling me." Sophia nodded, her face etched with grief and relief all at once. Eleanor's next move was decisive. She picked up the phone and found Beatrice's number in the old staff contact file she had once dismissed as housekeeping matters. Her thumb hovered for a moment before she pressed call. It rang twice, then voicemail. Eleanor left a message, her voice tight with emotion. "Beatrice, this is Eleanor. I know I don't deserve your time, but I'm asking for it anyway. I need to see you not just to apologize, but because the truth has finally come out, and I want you to hear it from me." She ended the call, then turned to Sophia. "We're not covering for him. Not this time." Sophia looked surprised, but then her lips trembled into the first real smile Eleanor had seen in days. "Good," she said. "She deserves better." Later that day, Eleanor waited by the front door, her heart hammering. She wasn't sure if Beatrice would come or even respond, but she would wait. When the doorbell rang just after sunset, Eleanor rushed to open it. There stood Beatrice. She wore a plain coat, her posture weary, eyes unreadable. Eleanor opened her mouth to speak, but for once found herself without words. Beatrice broke the silence. "You said you had something to tell me." Eleanor nodded. "Yes, but more importantly, I have something to make right." And as Beatrice stepped inside the house she once served in, the air shifted, not just with the weight of truth finally spoken, but with the quiet, powerful beginning of justice. The neighborhood where Beatrice lived was quiet, modest homes with trimmed hedges, faded porches, and gardens that spoke of care rather than wealth. Eleanor stepped out of her sleek black SUV, suddenly feeling overdressed in her tailored beige coat and heeled boots. She paused at the foot of the walkway, holding a small envelope in one hand and a trembling breath in her chest. The house in front of her was simple, but it radiated warmth in a way her own estate never had. Potted plants lined the steps. Wind chimes clinked gently with each breeze. Eleanor walked up the wooden porch slowly and knocked. Took a moment before the door creaked open. Beatrice stood there, framed by soft afternoon light. Her face was cautious but calm, the lines on her cheeks deeper, as if the weeks had aged her a little more. She wore a simple navy cardigan and slacks. No jewelry, no makeup, just dignity. Eleanor tried to speak, but emotion caught in her throat. "I know I shouldn't be here without warning," she finally said, her voice low. "But I had to say this in person." Beatrice said nothing. She didn't open the door fully, but she didn't close it either. Eleanor took a breath, her eyes glistening. "What I did to you wasn't just wrong. It was cruel. I didn't see you. I mean, I saw you every day, but I didn't see you. I saw a role, a function. And when something went wrong, I reached for the simplest target. Not because of evidence, but because of bias I wasn't even willing to admit I had." Beatrice's expression didn't change, but her hand loosened slightly on the edge of the door. "I came to apologize, not just for accusing you," Eleanor continued, "but for every time I reduced you to the help, for every time I let your kindness be invisible, for every time I let Sophia need you, rely on you, and I took it for granted. Eleanor opened the envelope and held it out. This is the money I owed you and more. I filed a formal statement clearing your name. The police now know the truth. Arthur's being investigated. There may be charges. And I spoke with the charity board to correct the record publicly. I've offered your job back, if you want it. Beatrice looked down at the envelope, but didn't take it. She opened the door a little wider, her eyes locked onto Eleanor's. I believe your apology, she said quietly. But I don't want that job. Eleanor nodded. She'd expected that. Some wounds, Beatrice added, don't heal where they were made. The words hit with quiet weight. Eleanor lowered her head. I understand. For a moment, silence passed between them, not cold, but heavy with everything unsaid. Then Beatrice stepped aside and gestured for her to come in. The living room was filled with warmth. Photos of children on the mantel, well-worn cushions, a crocheted blanket folded neatly on a rocking chair. On the side table, a copy of The Bluest Eye lay beside a pair of reading glasses. They sat opposite each other, two women who had once shared space every day, yet barely known each other. Sophia misses you, Eleanor said after a while. She talks about you all the time. Beatrice's eyes softened. She's a good girl. She's always been curious and kind. And lonely. Eleanor's throat tightened. I didn't realize how much she leaned on you, or how little I was present. You were busy, Beatrice said gently, and hurting in ways you never showed. Eleanor exhaled. I want to do better. I want to be different. And not just in words. I can see that, Beatrice said, folding her hands. But forgiveness isn't something you earn. It's something that grows, slowly. Eleanor nodded, tears finally slipping down her cheeks. I'll wait as long as it takes. They sat there for a long time in quiet understanding. No longer employer and employee, just two women in the aftermath of hurt, trying to make space for healing. Months later, the spring sunlight bathed Beatrice's front yard in golden warmth. As she clipped rosemary from her small herb garden, a familiar knock on the door made her turn. Sophia stood there, a little taller, her hair now tied back in a loose braid. She clutched something behind her back and smiled nervously. I hope it's okay, she said. I wanted to see you. Beatrice smiled softly. Of course. Sophia stepped forward and revealed a thin, colorfully illustrated book. On the cover, a small girl standing beside a tall, kind-looking woman in an apron. The title, The Warmest Kitchen. I wrote it for my creative project, Sophia said. But then a publisher picked it up. It's for younger kids, about a little girl who learns that love sometimes comes from the people we're told to overlook. She handed it to Beatrice. Beatrice flipped open the first page. Inside, the dedication read, To the woman who saw me when no one else did. Beatrice's fingers trembled. Her lips parted, but no words came. Sophia's eyes brimmed. Thank you for always being there. For seeing me when I didn't even know I needed it. Beatrice opened her arms and Sophia stepped into them without hesitation. And there, on the small porch of a modest home, generations of misunderstanding began to unravel. Not with grand gestures, but with honesty, repentance, and love that no longer needed to stay quiet.